Welcome to my review of the Rockford Files Season 5, Episode 14, Guilt, written by Juanita Bartlett and directed by William Wyatt. The episode begins at the Brent Air Yacht Club, where Colombo connection Pat Crowley's Valerie Pointer is walking her dog, before she's confronted by a gunman who shoots the dog and tries to shoot her before the gun jams. Shooting the dog immediately puts this goon at the top of my Rockford villains list, as the most evil character Jim faces. But before I get too distracted by that, we then cut to Jim and Rocky, as Jim receives a message from Valerie asking for his help, as they used to date. He and Dennis talk to her and we meet her son-in-law, Eric Genther. There's not too much Dennis can do, as it seems like a random attack, but Jim disagrees, so he offers to investigate.
Well, would you like me to nose around a little?
Valerie is an interior designer, currently working for the Zakarians, which doesn't give Jim any leads, so he wants Dennis to investigate every member of the yacht club.
The entire membership roster of the Brent Air Yacht Club? Talking about 300 people.
This is an opening we've seen variations on before. An ex-girlfriend client and a mysterious attempted murder. And I don't think the addition of the dog getting shot does enough to distinguish it. In fact, it leaves a fairly unpleasant taste in the mouth, certainly for me. Yes, it establishes the villains as ruthless and unsympathetic, but it's also treated a little too cavalierly within the actual plot, as the attempted murder was on Valerie, and that should have been enough to carry the plot forward. Especially as Jim then receives a visit from someone else wanting to hire him, Jean Ludwig, who wants him to investigate her sister's boyfriend. Jim turns that client down and suspects that it's actually a phony job offered to him to keep him off Valerie's case. So he follows Ludwig, but the Firebird is no match for her Porsche.
Come on.
Jim takes Valerie out for dinner, but as he drops her home, a second attempt is made on her life, this time by a guy in a ski mask, which Jim thinks is indicative that the first attempt was a contract job.
He wasn't wearing a mask because he knew Valerie wouldn't recognize him.
Valerie convinces Dennis to leave and take the uniformed officers with him as she attempts to seduce Jim, which is certainly odd behaviour for someone who's been shot at twice, and Jim is none too impressed.
Well, where I sleep is something I like to decide for myself.
You do whatever you think is best.
In conversation with Rocky, we find out the entire backstory of Valerie and Jim's relationship. After they broke up, she attempted suicide and ended up marrying and having a daughter with the doctor that looked after her. But then he was abusive towards her, and she's leaned on Jim many times over the years. It's a big exposition dump, but I have to give credit to Noah Beery and James Garner for making this feel entirely natural. The hardest thing to do in drama is to reveal information to the audience that the characters are already supposed to know. And while the scene of Jim hunting for his wallet is entirely contrived, the way these two consummate professionals are able to deliver the information conversationally really deserves to be studied as an example of how to do it well.
I ain't saying that pill taken was your fault.
Well, thanks.
Praise also has to go to Bartlett for crafting the dialogue to feel as conversational as it is, as it entirely makes sense for them to be recounting this information within this scene that the two characters already know. We then cut to Jim confronting Valerie, asking her to be explicit about what enemies she has, fed up of being given the runaround so far and getting nowhere with the case. We also discover in this scene that her daughter and Genther are actually divorced, and that Valerie employs him in an effort to mend their very broken relationship.
She took the children and just left the state.
Oh, and also that she happened to have an affair with current client Joe Zakarian at some point in the past.
You and Joe Zakarian? You had an affair, didn't you?
Jim thinks this is vital information, and that Zakarian is attempting to bump Valerie off so that she doesn't reveal the affair to Mrs. Zakarian. Jim goes to see Mrs. Zakarian about this, and she seems to already know about the affair. She tells Jim that she followed her husband the previous night, and saw him waiting outside Valerie's, the very night when someone took a shot at them both. In his rage, Zakarian takes a swipe at Jim, but takes a tumble down the stairs, and ends up in hospital, unable to confess. Valerie still doesn't believe that Zakarian would try to kill her, as she thinks that they had a good relationship that ended on good terms. And she might be right, as her first attempted murderer reappears to take a shot at Jim this time. Jim follows a hunch and tracks down the Porsche-driving femme fatale, who says that she was just doing a favour for Genther. As Jim takes off, she puts in a call to the shooter, Brian, who now plans to silence Genther before he can point the finger at Brian. When confronted by Jim, Genther confesses that he did hire Brian, but only to scare Valerie, so that his ex-wife would come back to town and he could grab his kids from her and take off. But Brian went too far, and, having been seen, now plans to kill everyone. As Jim takes Genther to the cops, Pilot Brian tries to take them out with his helicopter, giving us perhaps the most exciting and dangerous chase we've ever had in the show, as the chopper flies through a hangar, inches from the ground, before coming to a sticky end. To highlight just how crazy this stunt is, you can check out my review of Terminator 2, which features a similar but slightly more dangerous version of the same stunt. I was quite shocked to see this stunt when I first saw it in the episode, but health and safety in the 70s weren't what they are today. The episode itself is an odd mix of this high-octane chase, relationship drama between Jim and Valerie, and the murder plot that just narrowly comes together. It feels like it's trying to say something about how Valerie exploits everyone in her life, and what the consequences of that are, but never quite commits to her realising or even acknowledging this, despite her dog ending up dead, her ex-lover in the hospital, her son-in-law going to jail, and her daughter living in another state. And while I think it's not right to blame her for anyone else's actions, I don't think it went far enough to give her even a moment of self-reflection of the chaos she causes, despite being confronted by Jim directly about it. She remains unchanged by the entire experience, and that feels a bit hollow for such a well-constructed episode. It's an entertaining watch, but it's also very forgettable, and not one that really stays with you, despite the subject matter being something that absolutely should. For me, that puts it at a 4 out of 5. Thank you. Goodbye.